The great wrestling tournament is beginning its final bout. The winner will be declared the strongest man in the world and will gain fame and glory. For the first time in the tournament's history, a human has reached the final. His name is Peter Grill. Wanting to impress the beautiful Luvelia Sanctos, he manages to win, becoming the first human to win in the last 150 years. After winning, the protagonist heads towards Luvelia to celebrate, but Mimi Alpacas from the same guild approaches him. She congratulates him, expresses joy at being the first to contact him, and asks him a favor. In a good mood, our protagonist is willing to listen, but is surprised when he hears that she wants babies from him. Mimi explains that as an ogre, producing strong offspring is very important, and a champion like him is perfect as a breeding partner, so she asks him to have their moment of fun and have children. He immediately refuses, but Mimi doesn't give up. Lisa Alpacas, Mimi's older sister, appears and claims that she will be the one to have his baby, explaining that many nations and races will try to obtain his seed. Unable to reason with them, he tricks them into looking the other way and takes the opportunity to escape. Thus, our protagonist heads to a church where Luvelia is waiting for him. She explains that her father gave them his blessing and they can marry and then have children. The protagonist asks her to remind him how children are made, and she explains that when two people love each other, a stork brings their child. Our hero finds her super innocent and blames his father, the Guildmaster, for being overprotective and brainwashing her. During the 2 years they've been dating, they could only hold hands. That night, after showering, the protagonist finds Mimi covered only with a towel under her sheets, but dismisses her. Upon returning to bed, he then finds Lisa in a towel and also dismisses her. They start banging on the door, wanting to come back in, and as they create enough noise and other people start coming out of their rooms, the protagonist lets them in to avoid causing more trouble. The two girls explain that they are aware of Luvelia, but they also know that they have only held hands, whereas they are not as innocent, and promise him that he will have a lot of fun if he gives in. Our hero wants to remain faithful to Luvelia, but when the girls drop their towels and Lisa forces him to touch her, he loses control. In the morning, a remorseful Peter wakes up with the two girls sleeping beside him. Feeling guilty for giving in to temptation, our protagonist begins to cry for what he had done, and at that moment, Luvelia calls to his door. Episode 2. Upon hearing that Luvelia is at the door, our hero panics and quickly hides the ogres in the closet, though they complain. Then he opens the door and explains that he's sweaty because he was training. Luvelia enters and tells him that she plans to tell her father about their engagement today. She asks for his support and the protagonist gladly agrees. However, Guildmaster Sanctos, the leader of the Adventurers Guild and Luvelia's father, rejects him. The girl reproaches him for agreeing that she can marry the champion and wonders why he is now rejecting it. Guildmaster becomes enraged and wants to kill our hero immediately, but Luvelia intervenes, saying that if he does not agree, then she will run away with Peter. Faced with the possibility of losing Luvelia, Guildmaster has no other choice and accepts their engagement, but his hatred towards our hero only grows. With the official engagement, they celebrate that night. Peter feels guilty for what he did with the ogres. At that moment, they appear and congratulate him on his engagement, but they want to repeat the process of making babies. The young women explain to him that their engagement is not a problem for them, as they only want a child. They take off his pants and their clothes, telling him that they will keep it a secret if he continues with them until they get pregnant. Something that doesn't seem too easy, not the pregnancy part but the secret, as the ogres have no problem throwing themselves at our hero at the first opportunity no matter who is around, so good luck with that, Peter. With the girls on top of him, our protagonist hears Luvelia approaching and hides the ogres under the table and sits on a chair. Luvelia arrives and sits at the table, unaware that Peter has several surprises under the table that he would prefer not to reveal. The two converse, but then Luvelia's father also appears and asks Peter to leave them alone so he can sit in his chair and talk to his daughter, as he cannot get up, as it would reveal that he is without pants, and with the ogres undressing under the table, our protagonist refuses and explains that not giving up his seat next to Luvelia is a testament to his commitment to her. Guildmaster becomes furious, but Luvelia stops him by threatening to leave and break all ties with him if he hurts Peter, so the man retreats since the girl has a rather strange reassuring power over her father, which we will surely talk about later. Luvelia is impressed, as no one had ever stood up for her in that way before. At that moment, the ogres begin to play with his thing, leaving him confused and excited, but luckily, Guildmaster loses his temper and starts breaking things, so Luvelia goes to him. The girls then come out wanting to continue. Peter disagrees, but the girls claim that his thing has a different opinion. The party continues and seems like one of those busy parties, but well, whatever. In the morning, with the ogres in bed, Peter regrets again what he had done, although this time he doesn't seem so regretful, but he also realizes that it's no merit to realize your mistake when you've already committed it twice. Episode 3. Peter dreams of finally being able to be intimate with Luvelia, but upon touching her chest, he finds it flat and she transforms into his father, Albatross. He is startled by this horrific vision and wakes up screaming only to discover that there is actually a girl on top of him. He thinks she is a thief and tries to hold her down while the girl complains that everything would have been fine if he had just kept sleeping. Tim Robinson, one of his neighbors, passes by Peter's room and hears noises, thinking Peter is drinking. He enters the room and turns on the lights to find Peter and a naked girl in bed in an indefensible situation. The man decides to keep quiet and leaves, commenting that Peter has the guts to cheat on Luvelia because, indeed, everyone in this world is human trash. Given the situation, the girl decides she needs to do it the old-fashioned way and introduces herself as Vegan Eldriel, an elven ambassador who came to acquire his seed. Peter wonders why him exactly, and Vegan says they require the inferior human seed to save their village from annihilation. As they continuously fail to achieve results in the Great Wrestling Tournament, they are ridiculed by neighboring countries and terrorized with acts of aggression. For this reason, and because historically speaking, elves are not physically powerful, the Elven Council had chosen her to obtain an optimal genetic specimen from an external source. Thus, the elf invites him to do whatever he wants with her, but he rejects her, although he is starting to feel flattered that there are so many beautiful girls after him. Vegan is irritated that a mere human has rejected her, a noble elf, and claims that she will take his seed by force. However, Peter shows her that his thing isn't even up as his heart belongs to another. With no other option, Vegan decides to use her ultimate weapon. She casts a spell on his groin, explaining that it is a curse of forbidden sorcery, and as she leaves, she tells him that by tomorrow night he will come to her on his knees begging for mercy. Our hero doesn't worry too much, as on one hand, the prediction seems too specific, and on the other, he had never heard of someone cursing someone's groin, so he prepares to start his day. Indeed, the day is just beginning. While Luvelia is on a mission, she is attacked by a creature. A guild member informs Peter that Luvelia was attacked by a great goblin worm, said to devour men and defile women. Peter quickly rushes to Luvelia's location. Meanwhile, Luvelia and her men, injured, take refuge in a cave. The young woman tries to fight, but she is caught by the goblin's tentacles. Episode 4. The great goblin worm is about to abuse Luvelia, however, Peter arrives just in time and frees her. Angry, he confronts the goblin and easily kills it, causing the other warriors to acclaim his name. The ogres are watching the battle and become even more excited about their desire to obtain his genes. Luvelia tells him that this situation has only shown how he will always be there to protect her, but Peter can't think of anything else but the times he has been deceived. Later, Peter bathes and remembers how the villagers thanked him for killing the creature, as it was a problem for them. However, he can't understand why he's so hard. Indeed, for several hours our protagonist has been going back and forth with his member quite awake and doesn't know how to calm it down, as his current situation has caused him a couple of uncomfortable moments throughout the day. Our protagonist wonders if Vegan has anything to do with it, and she appears out of nowhere confirming his suspicions. She explains that it's a forbidden curse called the Eternal Rise. However, having it for too long will cause permanent damage and an inability to return the member to its conditions. Peter begs her to remove the curse, and Vegan explains that the only way to undo it is by releasing his juices inside her. Peter still refuses, stating that Luvelia is the only woman for him. At that moment, Luvelia hears Peter's voice and realizes he's in the nearby room. The young woman speaks to him through the wall and asks if he knows the legends about this particular hot spring, and not knowing it, she explains that according to rumors, those who immerse themselves in the hot spring will be blessed with children. Luvelia asks Peter if he would join her and test the rumors so the stork would come down from the sky and bless them with children. Well, this reminds us that she's an idiot. Peter wants to join her more than anything in the world, as he had never progressed beyond holding hands with her, but due to Vegan's curse, he's afraid of poking her eye out, so he ends up explaining that he cannot join Luvelia at that moment. She understands and tells him it's okay. After all, someone might see them, and she retreats a little disappointed. With no choice, Peter kneels down and begs Vegan to break his curse, telling himself that this time he has no choice and is being forced, which exempts him from all guilt. She happily accepts, and they get into bed. In the morning, Peter is depressed about what he did, and the elf recognizes that it hasn't been so bad. Episode 5. Albatross feels like he's losing Luvelia, but when a missive arrives, the scheming man forms a plan. The next day, he informs Peter Grill that due to his fame as the tournament champion, a marriage proposal has arrived from Orkland, and they request his future offspring. Luvelia arrives wondering what's going on since the guild has accepted her engagement to Peter. Albatross and Goodman explain that this is just formal, and the noble from Orkland is one of the guild's most influential sponsors, so it would be imprudent to reject immediately. That's why it's best to proceed with the standard protocol and then meet with the bride to give a more formal rejection, as if Peter is faithful, he wouldn't fall in love with her. Luvelia understands what he's trying to do, affirming that Peter would never betray her, which triggers our hero's feelings of guilt as he has done nothing but deceive her in recent days. Peter and Albatross go to meet with Babe Roastpork, the leader of Orkland, who proudly tells them that if the engagement goes well, both Orkland and the guild could be allies, bringing economic prosperity to both parties. Peter understands that Albatross is planning to involve him in some kind of scandal, but feels secure because orcs and humans have very different ideals of beauty, so when the Orc King calls his representative, he is sure it won't be too difficult to cancel any kind of plan. But when Piglet, the daughter of the Orc King, arrives, our protagonist realizes that the young woman is extremely beautiful. Proudly, Roastpork and Albatross leave Piglet and Peter alone to get to know each other. Walking through the city, Piglet stops and embarrassedly says that she had never talked so much with a man, which surprises Peter as they had barely spoken to each other. The young woman panics, and Peter consoles her. While not too far away, Albatross sees how his plan is yielding results and receives a visit from 3 mysterious thugs. Piglet explains that Master Babe has taken her as a servant and that she is doing this as she has been instructed. The young orc comments that his performance in the tournament was impressive and that it's even etched in her memory, but as she's considered an outcast in orc society and repulsive for resembling a human, only a fool would be with her. And then she runs away. She runs into 3 bullies, secretly sent by Albatross, but Peter comes to her rescue. As they run, she thanks him for rescuing her, and Peter explains that although to other orcs she may be ugly, by human world standards, she's considered pretty. Upon hearing these words, she feels embarrassed but requests that they take a walk through the city together, and Peter agrees. Thus, the young woman spends a wonderful afternoon because in a human city, her appearance goes unnoticed, and for the first time in a long time, she doesn't feel judged. Upon returning with Babe and Albatross, Peter states that the marriage proposal is just a trap to gain political points, and the intentions of those involved are not considered. He mentions that Piglet feels the same and wouldn't want to get married. Babe asks Piglet if that's true, but since she doesn't respond, she comments that they haven't spent enough time together and leaves Piglet and Peter in a room for the night. Albatross explains that by spending the night together, they can say they at least tried, and he asks his future son-in-law not to make any errors in judgment and behave. Piglet then appears in a transparent robe and with a look that makes us want to see the next episode. Episode 6. It turns out that Albatross, Goodman, and Babe Roastpork had given Piglet an aphrodisiac in her drink without her realizing it. Thus, it is almost certain that Peter will consummate his engagement with Piglet, which will not only bring economic prosperity to the guild, but also give the guild leader an excuse to get rid of his annoying son-in-law. Meanwhile, Piglet tells Peter Grill that she has made a decision. Peter is surprised because he thought she was against it. Wanting to resist but tempted by the stunning body of the orc, Peter explains that he is engaged to another woman. However, Piglet says she doesn't care and pushes him onto the bed, explaining that polygyny is a norm for orcs. Peter explains that it's all a conspiracy and they're trying to lure them into a trap. Piglet steps back, starts crying, and claims she knew she was ugly. He stops her, telling her she's beautiful, and Piglet kisses him. When he feels he's losing control, he tries to mediate, but then Piglet undresses, and upon seeing her breasts, Peter succumbs to temptation. In the morning, Peter is depressed about what he did. He knows it was a trap. However, he was defeated by a pair of breasts, and now if Piglet reports what they did, Albatross will kill him. Piglet wakes up and happily tells our hero that he can report to Babe that the two of them have consummated the relationship. But our protagonist tells her that she cannot tell anyone what happened and asks if she wants to live her life as a puppet for their political causes or wants to decide for herself. While it's all a lie and he only wants to save himself, the young man's words resonate in the girl's head, leaving her thinking, as it seems our protagonist is quite smart when blood reaches his brain and he doesn't concentrate down there. Gathered with Albatross and Babe, and after carefully considering what she really wants, Piglet states that Peter did not touch her, but as she felt an undeniable connection, she requests to be transferred to Peter's guild to stay by his side and attend to his needs, and will continue to pursue a great future for Orkland. Babe and Albatross approved immediately. Babe for the possibility of marrying an orc with the champion, and Albatross because he knows that with the orc nearby, temptation will be stronger for Peter, so everyone wins, especially Peter, who got off easy. Later, Piglet explains that after careful thought, she decided that what she wants for herself is to prevent Orkland from getting a seed. And after having children with Peter, she will train them well and use her power to crush those pigs from Orkland who made her life hell. Thus, Piglet promises to stand by his side until she can get pregnant with him, something that doesn't seem too difficult as despite her appearance, she is still an orc and orc women are quite fertile. Which makes me think that by now the guy should have impregnated someone. I don't know, it seems to me that Sword is lacking a bit of sharpness at this point. Episode 7. Later, in our protagonist's apartment, Piglet prepares dinner for Peter. However, Mimi and Lisa arrive and are not happy to see an orc and an elf there. Vegan claims that Peter Peter's offspring belongs to the elves, and they can settle it with a death match, which the ogres accept and defeat the elf with a single blow. Peter ends the fight and tells them they must get along, a gesture that Vegan finds charming, as despite his intentions, she's starting to feel something for him. The ogres ask our hero what's going on with the orc, and Piglet tells them that she is moved to the city and to the guild as Peter's assistant. The girls can't agree as each one wants Peter's seed. Piglet explains that she didn't intend to keep Peter for herself alone and is okay with being one of his lovers. That surprises the other three, and Vegan mistakes Piglet for laughing at her and wants to curse her, but Peter stops her. Since conflict is inevitable, Lisa proposes that they decide hierarchy by competing using their feminine charms, and everyone agrees, except Peter, but so far, no one has really been interested in his opinion. Vegan then summons Agape, a fairy who can measure male pleasure. Vegan announces the rules: the one who can cause the most pleasure in Peter's pants wins. The ogres strip naked and flaunt their attributes, causing a pleasure score of 91 in Peter's pants and giving him quite a pain. Seeing that, Vegan enters Tim's room, looking for some good clothes she can wear, and then reveals herself in a bikini, but with a flat chest she gets a score of only 3, which annoys Vegan because she can't make Peter rise the Titan. Then Piglet decides it's her turn, but as she was already almost naked with an apron, she also gets a score of 91 without even needing to do anything to drive our hero crazy. The girls can't stop arguing as Vegan wants them not to use their upper attributes, and they tease her for not having any. Tim, the protagonist's neighbor, enters drunk, and Peter asks him to stop the fight, and he says that a fight stops with alcohol. They start drinking and forget the fight, but soon they start trying to give Peter more alcohol. He realizes they want to get him drunk and use him and wants to resist the temptation, but then the girls start taking off their clothes. Peter wakes up in the morning with the girls around him, wondering if he betrayed Luvelia once again. He wakes Vegan up asking her what happened last night, and she explains that he was quite excited that even Agape broke because his levels were off the scale. As the other girls also wake up and sparks fly again, to avoid falling into the same situation, they agree on official terms regarding Peter's reproductive resources, so they decide to create a set of rules. Episode 8, the girls sit down to decide the terms of who and when they can use Peter Grill's reproductive resources. After some discussions, they manage to reach an agreement. As a result, our protagonist is obliged to attend to the girls daily until the first day off arrives. Peter is excited and dresses as if he were going out on a date with Luvelia, which surprises me because with the horns he has, he shouldn't be able to cross a door. Ignorance is bliss, and Luvelia is happy to see her fiancé, so Peter spends the day shopping with her and then goes out to dinner. In this way, the young man spends a relaxed and guilt-free day with the woman he loves without having to hide from anyone. At night, the two go to dinner at a fancy restaurant, and a scar on our protagonist's hand comes up in conversation. Luvelia remembers how she is to blame for that wound, to which he responds that if it weren't for that wound, they would never have met. While enjoying his time with her, Mimi appears. He reminds her that it's his day off, but she comments that it's even better since he'll be hers alone. That annoys Peter because she's breaking the pact. Luvelia comments that he's been quite close to Mimi recently, and Peter explains that she asked him to help her with her combat training. When Mimi was about to tell the truth, he drags her to the bathroom. There, he asks her not to ruin his date, but Mimi wants something quick and takes off her clothes. After quickly doing it, he returns to Luvelia, only to find Vegan there too, who also wants something quick since she can have him just for herself on his day off. However, upon returning to Luvelia, he now sees Lisa there too, and he also takes her to the bathroom. While he waits, Luvelia drinks wine and reminisces old memories with Peter. The young woman recalls that she was Peter's instructor and captain, whom she couldn't stand. However, the young man sacrificed himself for her, receiving a wound in his hand from a monster and falling both down a cliff, where she cared for him until the rescue arrived. After dinner, a dehydrated Peter apologizes for the girls who ruined their date, but Luvelia says she understands that as the strongest warrior in the world, he is popular. She comments that it would be nice for both of them to go somewhere nice and relaxing outside of guild duties, and Peter agrees. When she leaves, he tries to stop her but is unable to do so, and he feels like the girls are dragging him. He doesn't know how much he can withstand their torture and still protect his relationship with Luvelia and his head, as if the young woman's father finds out, it will be his end. Episode 9, Peter takes a bath after his date with Luvelia and feels that the date was ruined. Then, Piglet enters the bathroom and Peter sees it coming, but she tells him that she understands it's his day off and plans to respect it, so she suggests washing Peter's back. The orc tells him that he can share his pain with her and that she wouldn't do anything to hurt him. As he complains, Piglet removes the towel, and upon seeing her enormous attributes, Peter is drawn to them and they end up doing it. To Peter's surprise, the other girls are also in the bathroom and see them. They try to blame Piglet for breaking the rules, but she comments that they did it first. Faced with the situation, the girls decide to share the fluids and they all pounce on Peter for another round. Peter can't take it anymore and starts hitting the water, asking what the point of the rules is if they're going to break them. Mimi comments that the pact doesn't specify any punishment for breaking the rules, so they feel free to do so. Realizing there won't be an end, Peter's mind breaks and he flees. Broken inside, our hero runs naked through the city streets wanting to leave everything behind, but soon he realizes he can't leave Luvelia or the life he fought so hard to get. While sitting naked in the rain, an ogre appears and is willing to listen to his problem. Peter explains that he has made many terrible mistakes, but he can't get Luvelia out of his mind. The ogre comments that love is beyond his control and that he too has just arrived in the city looking for the woman who stole his heart. He has been searching for her for 3 years and finally heard that she is in the Yakapachi Warriors Guild. The ogre tells him that if Peter's love is pure, the gods will light his path with their blessings. Peter feels comforted and motivated. He explains that he is also in the guild and asks the ogre the woman's name. The ogre explains that she is the strongest warrior and princess of Ogreston, Lady Lisa Alpacas. Peter is surprised to learn that Lisa is a princess. Episode 10. Peter rushes to Lisa and asks her if it's true that she is royalty. Lisa wonders where he heard that from. He asks her not to change the subject and the ogre confirms that both she and her sister are royalty and she is the heir to Ogreston. This would be an important revelation, but what catches our attention the most is that throughout this dialogue, she didn't take off her clothes. At the guild reception, Michi, the guild receptionist, enjoys looking at men's muscles in a magazine. Antonio Spartacus, the ogre we recently met, then appears and she finds his pectorals impressive. Antonio introduces himself but realizes Michi isn't even listening. Mimi appears asking if there is any work for them and Antonio is surprised to see her. Back in our hero's apartment, Peter tells Lisa that if another country finds out he has impregnated a princess, it will be an international scandal, but she assures him that she's only interested in his genes and once she gets pregnant, she'll leave and won't reveal her name. Remembering what series this is, she takes off her clothes and takes Peter to bed. Following Mimi's instructions, Antonio arrives at Peter's house looking for Lisa and remembering how much he loves her, even though she and her sister disappeared 3 years ago, leaving only a note. The ogre hears his beloved's voice and enters the room, but is surprised to see Lisa and Peter in bed. Antonio becomes enraged, breaks the wall, and throws Peter out. He attacks him with his axe, and Peter is forced to defend himself using a banana. Why he had a banana in his hand, you'll have to tell me in the comments. Peter uses the banana to block Antonio's attacks, who has the worst axe in the world that can't even cut a banana. However, the banana reaches a breaking point, and our hero doesn't know how many more blows he can withstand, but luckily for Peter, Lisa orders Antonio to stop. Back in Peter's room, Antonio asks Lisa to return to her homeland because without her presence there, their armies fight without a leader. Lisa explains that although the suffering of her soldiers breaks her heart, she cannot return yet because her 3-year quest led her to Peter and she wants his child as ogres fight for a generation stronger than the last. Antonio still wonders why, and Lisa comments that the reason she doesn't want to have children with another ogre is that he and the other ogres in Ogreston are even weaker than her. If there were a man strong enough in Ogreston, she wouldn't have undertaken this journey. Antonio asserts that may be true, and it certainly was 3 years ago, but since she left 3 years ago, he dedicated himself to training very hard and became much stronger, so he wants to prove it and challenges Peter to a duel. News of the duel spreads, and people gather in the arena to watch it. They hear that it all started over a woman, but knowing Peter has a fiancé, they assume the ogre wants to defeat Peter and gain fame and confidence to propose to the woman he wants, while Peter accepted the fight with nothing to gain. Peter then realizes that he could lose the fight and Antonio will take Lisa to his country, and that will solve one of his problems. Episode 11. Peter decides to throw the match. However, Lisa appears and points out where Luvelia will be watching the match, with Mimi by her side signaling him. Lisa tells our hero not to think about losing on purpose, or both she and her sister will reveal their agreement to his fiancé. Peter is impressed by the ogre sister's intelligence, who instantly guessed his intentions, and feeling a bit down, he decides to fight for real. Antonio tells Peter that he regrets ever speaking of love to someone as treacherous and deceitful as him. He knows he could destroy him without even lifting a sword, as if he were to tell everyone about his activities, it would be his end. However, as he is an honorable warrior, he has decided to do things properly. The duel begins, and Antonio adopts a stance that Tim Robinson immediately recognizes as the double tomahawk gigant style, an unbeatable technique used by the fearsome army of Ogreston, said to which no living creature can withstand the crushing weight of the whirlwinds. Antonio reveals that he has loved Lisa since childhood and perfected his skills while also maintaining a strict code of purity. Upon hearing that he is a virgin, the crowd feels compassion for him and starts cheering for Pītā to lose. However, Pītā cannot afford to lose, and when Antonio charges at him using his gigant style, Pītā easily defeats him with a single blow and with his eyes closed, which makes the crowd boo him. Lisa announces him as the loser, declaring she has no interest in the weak. Antonio begs for another chance, while Pītā tells him to catch his breath. Lisa agrees to give Antonio another chance, but clarifies that this time she won't fight with Pītā. Instead, since he's so determined to prove his strength, she will fight against him in 1 week because at the level he is currently, he would be easily defeated. Everyone leaves and Pītā decides to do the same. However, Antonio stops him, explaining that he could never do anything against Lisa, and experiencing Pītā's strength has made him understand why the princess is after him. He asks if he can become his apprentice. Vegan and Piglet appear and tell Pītā to accept, explaining that if they train him and he wins, he will take Lisa to her homeland. After some thought, Pītā accepts but warns the ogre that this will be the hardest training of his life. Pītā starts Antonio's training with Vegan's help using her magic and Piglet's kitchen to improve his muscles. One day, during lunch, Pītā sees Michi and wonders why he's there. Piglet explains that he has been coming often, bringing lunch boxes for Antonio, and she believes that Michi may love him. The day of the duel arrives, and Antonio and Lisa go to the arena for the fight. Lisa notices that something has changed in the ogre, and Antonio, who by the way has the least ogre-like name in the world after Lisa, tells her that he will finally be able to prove his worth as a man, and the battle begins. Episode 12, Antonio and Lisa begin their duel. Pītā is sure that Antonio is now stronger than Lisa, but upon seeing her smile and noticing that Antonio is moving slower than usual, he realizes that Lisa is using her breasts to distract Antonio, who can't take his eyes off them. Realizing this, Pītā knows the fight is over, and moments later, Lisa defeats Antonio, with Pītā commenting that his decision to remain a virgin cost him the victory. The other girls accuse Lisa of cheating, but the ogre sisters respond that a fight is a fight and the goal is to win. Meanwhile, a sad Michi watches as Antonio lies on the ground. Antonio then wakes up to realize he lost again, and Pītā tells him that even if they asked for another rematch, the result would be the same since he can never defeat Lisa in her current state. When Michi comes to visit the ogre, Pītā realizes that Antonio needs to get used to being around women. Pītā takes Antonio aside and tells him that Michi is known for being fond of guys with huge muscles and that he would be able to win her over easily. Pītā explains that he can't beat Lisa because he's too susceptible to the charms of girls and that he needs to accumulate experience with women. Antonio doesn't like the idea of pairing up with another woman besides Lisa, but Pītā asks him if he feels butterflies in his stomach when Michi is around. Antonio doesn't deny it but mentions that he's devoted to Lisa, and Pītā points out that's the problem because he's depriving himself of other possibilities by being too focused on her. Michi, who had overheard their conversation, after all, he was on the other side of the cloth, and these people like to talk loudly, joins the conversation and asserts that he knows he deeply loves Lisa, but she deeply loves Antonio. Upon hearing this, Antonio also falls in love with her, and Pītā leaves them alone. The next day, after sleeping with Michi, Antonio feels different, even more powerful, and Pītā tells him he can now face Lisa. However, Antonio claims that Pītā was right, and by being too focused on one woman, he was missing out on many things. Then, Michi, thankfully able to walk after the previous night, appears with lunch, and Antonio melts in front of her, saying he has already forgotten about Lisa and leaves with Michi. Pītā laments his luck as the ogre only needed to find a girlfriend, and after that he forgot his mission and couldn't take Lisa away, so nothing has changed. Then, Lisa appears and thanks Pītā for helping Antonio as he is a great leader and soldier. She asks him what true happiness is for him, being married to a naive woman and having Albatross as a father-in-law or something more. And if he is with her, he can be the king of a nation. As Lisa leaves, Luvelia appears and seeing her smile, he knows this is his path to happiness. She informs him that the goblin invasion has begun and they plan to go on vacation after the mission ends. Our heroes embark on the mission accompanied by the girls who are not willing to let Luvelia have all the fun to herself. Meanwhile, the elite hobgoblins and Pītā's sister appear. But this is the end of the first part of the summary. If you want more, comment